thanks for coming this afternoon. Today we have a truly special guest with us today. It's the mayor of Los Angeles, Antonio Villaraigosa. A lot of you know his incredibly impressive and moving story growing up in a challenging area of Los Angeles, graduating from Roosevelt High School, where he just was earlier this morning. Got a degree at a college degree at a place that we're not going to talk about. He since upgraded to get an honorary degree from USC a couple of years ago, and has had truly a dedicated career in public service. This is a man who has committed his life to making our city, state, and nation a better place, and we're honored to have him with us today. So I thought I'd just ask him a couple questions to get us started, and then we'll like to hear from you, see what you'd like to ask the mayor.
Well, I just want you to know, I know a little bit about him. Graduated cum laude from the University of Loyola at Chicago, went to University of Chicago Law School, was a great student there, and has been all over the country, and now is the dean here.
Yeah, but so the best thing is being dean here.
Yeah,
being
that's
dean
right.
here. But you talk about education. I know this has been a priority for you. Can you reflect on the gains that we've made during your 2 terms as mayor, and what you think the future is for our city on this?
Well, first of all, it's great to be here with all of you, and I'm a big fan of USC and their law school, their business school, and virtually every school here. I mean, this is a great university, and one that understands that its future is tied to the future of LA, and that's what I love about this place. And great to be here with you, Dean Rasmussen. And education is the economic issue of our time. I don't have to tell you all about the job market. Disproportionately, the people that are most successful in our economy today are people that have an education, they have a skill set, a BA, an MA, a professional degree. Our unemployment rate right now is about 12.7%. According to economists, we're not going to get back to where we were before the recession till 2018. One of the biggest reasons is the number of people that we have that don't have a high school diploma or barely have a high school education. So education is the economic issue of our time. It's the democracy issue of our time. I mean, when you hear some of the debates and watch some of these debates and realize, how little some of these people know about history and geography and some of the basics of how the government works. But importantly, if you're not an educated citizenry, you can't really engage in a democracy in the way that we would all hope for. And finally, it's the civil rights issue of our time. 2025, we're going to be 1 million down in the number of college graduates, in no small part because of the achievement gap. So focusing on education, K through 12, our public universities, our community colleges, critical for not just LA and California's, but America's future competitiveness and America's future as a nation.
And another thing that has, I think, affected us here at USC is the investments that have been made in mass transit over the last 6 years, including the Expo line, which is going to open soon.
April 28th. We're all laughing because it was supposed to open a while back. Look, I'm 59 years old. I was shining shoes on Broadway, 7th and Broadway, 5th and Broadway, when I was 5, 6, and 7. And I remember when we actually had a very robust transportation system in this region. Your parents and grandparents, probably more grandparents, really remember that. So, what we're doing when we put together the initiative on the ballot, Measure R, a half-penny sales tax, generating $40 billion to improve our streets, our highways, our bridges, but importantly, to double the size of the rail system was very, very important. Just in the last 6 years, we opened up the Orange Line from North Hollywood to connecting the subway there from North Hollywood to Woodland Hills. We opened up the east side extension of the Gold Line. We'll open for service the first phase of the Exposition Line in April 28th. In June, we'll open for service the extension of the Orange Line from Woodland Hills to Chatsworth. We've broken ground on the extension of the Gold Line from Pasadena to Azusa. We've broken ground on the phase 2 of the Exposition Line, which will take us from Culver City to Santa Monica. And later in the year, we're going to break ground on the Crenshaw Line. No city in the nation is moving as aggressively as we are to make up all the lost ground. And that was 60, almost 70 years of not really making investments in our public transportation system. So, yeah, it's something I'm proud of, but my hope is that we can accelerate that. If you've watched and, we're trying to accelerate the public transportation portion from 30 years to 10 by getting the federal government to loan us money so we can accelerate these programs, and soon putting on the ballot an extension of Measure R that will end the sunset. And what that will do is it will allow us to bond into the out years to really accelerate the construction now.
I know another thing that you have been focusing on, has gotten a lot of attention, is the business climate in Los Angeles. Can you talk about the direction of that going? Because I think a lot of our students are going to end up working in Los Angeles, and a healthy business climate obviously creates a lot of work for a lot of people, including attorneys.
Well, very true. And by the way, let me mention, I focused on education, but part of your question, I'm got to be a better listener. Part of your question is what have we done? And because I want to connect this to the job environment again. You know, in the last 6.5 years, we've doubled the number of charters in LA, and we have some of the most successful charter schools in the country. We have more kids in charter schools than any school district in the country. We've doubled the number of schools that are at 800 on the Academic Performance Index, and so if you're from California, you know that's kind of the standard that they want us to be at. Double the number of schools at 800. We've reduced from 33% to 10 the number of failing schools at 650 and below. We've done a thing called public school choice, which says that every failing school and every new school has to compete for an operator. We've just negotiated a contract with the teachers union to allow more flexibility, particularly in the lowest performing schools. And you mentioned I was at Roosevelt, I've taken over 21 schools, 18,000 kids. I took on the lowest performing schools in Los Angeles, the most violent schools in Watts, downtown, and East LA, and we're showing improvement. So we've made progress, but we still have a long way to go. How does that connect to the business environment? I just mentioned we have a 12.5% unemployment rate. As you know, around the country, the employment rate is closer to 8%. When President Obama said at the beginning of his term, that the worst case scenario was a double-digit unemployment rate, I was standing at the White House and said, well, we're there. And so what are we doing to address it? Well, I mentioned Measure R. If we can accelerate the funding that I mentioned from 30 years to 10, 166,000 jobs. I just left Alaska Airlines, where we've renovated a $278 million project, renovating Terminal 6. Importantly, that's part of a $4.3 billion initiative to upgrade our airport, 20,000 jobs. At the port, where you may have seen I brought Vice President Xi Jinping, the next president of China, to our port, where we've engaged in an effort to invest 1.5 million jobs over the first 5 years, another 1.5 billion over the next 5, 20,000 jobs. But we're also doing a number of other things. We've declared a business tax holiday to kind of bring and attract new businesses to LA. We're focusing on clean tech and where entertainment meets high tech, because those are areas where we actually have, a talent pool. We are engaged in an effort to really try to do what we can to bring foreign trade investment into LA. And importantly, we're leading the country in developing an export initiative, because LA imports we import 44% of the seaborne goods that enter the United States, 40% of China's goods, but we don't export a whole lot. So we're focusing on exports to China, to Asia. In fact, I was here yesterday at SC's business school to talk about that. So those are some of the things.
Good. I could ask the mayor questions for a while, but how about the students? Always love to hear from the students. Yes.
I've got a question about overcrowding with the county jail. There's been a lot of talk about two parts: the prison overcrowding, and also that recent Supreme Court decision that said they had to accelerate, the state had to accelerate the releasing of prisoners. We know that a lot of those people are going to migrate to cities, like I said, in Los Angeles. I'm just wondering, has the mayor's office been involved with that issue on the state level, as far as state release, but also what to do about overcrowding at the county jail?
Okay, that's the county, and I'm not an expert there, and I'm not going to pretend to be, but let me just say a couple things about that. When I got elected in 1994 to the State Assembly, we had roughly 72,000 people in our prisons. At our height a few years ago, we had 170,000 people plus in our prisons. Overcrowded is not the word. I think the term, the legal term they described it was an unconstitutional level of overcrowding. So the courts have asked the state to reduce the size of their prison population. I think one way to do that is to reform 3 strikes you're out, and I will be supporting an initiative to make the 3rd felony a violent felony. I think that we need to focus more on rehabilitation, a lot more. What I don't like about the plan the state has come up with is they call it realignment, saying, okay, we'll take the prisoners, we'll let out some of the nonviolent offenders, we'll take the other ones and put them in your county system. Our county system already releases people much earlier than the time they were supposed to spend in there. There's almost no money for rehabilitation. It's a plan that I'm not sure is going to work, and that's why I've taken umbrage with it. I do believe in rehabilitation, and I think we need to invest a lot more in these people, giving them skill set, counseling, both drug counseling, but also and support. I think we need to address some of our nonviolent drug crimes in a smarter way. You could still be tough on crime, but smart on it. But you can't do it with no resources. It's kind of like what's going on in the schools right now. They're saying, cut, 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 cut. We're at the bottom, and people are saying, well, why aren't you doing more with what you got? I do think we need to do more with what we got, but we also need more. So I'm concerned about it. I really am. And I am unabashedly somebody who thinks that our prison building system was out of control. It talked tough, but when your recidivism rate is as high as California's is, it's not really tough. You're just warehousing these people, and they come out, and commit those crimes and do them all over again. So tough is effective. And I think we need to be more effective. I don't think the current state's realignment program, without resources and without a serious investment in rehabilitation, is the way to go. Again, I'm not an expert, but that's my view.
Yeah, I love this. A lot of hands. Mr. Beasley.
Going back to the schools, what do you think the lesson is going forward? Hello? What do you think the lesson is going forward from your experience with trying to take control of the school district?
Well, first of all, I mean, think about this. Most of you, probably not homeowners yet, parents are. Think about this. When your parents were looking for a house, any of us, when you're looking for a house, what do you ask the realtor? How are the schools in the neighborhood? Why? Housing values are connected to quality schools in that neighborhood. Well, if a great neighborhood is anchored by a great public school, so are great cities. So I believe strongly, and you're seeing that more and more across the country, that mayors have to spearhead improving and reforming our schools. What have I learned? I've learned how difficult that is. In this city, I don't have mayoral control in the way they do in New York, in Chicago, in Washington, D.C., in Denver, in Boston, and in a number of cities. That makes it difficult. I've learned as well that it's not easy. That, you know, I like to say, you know, it was more difficult to teach me. You know, parents were not college graduates, grew up in a broken home, domestic violence, you know, poverty. More difficult to teach me than my son, whose mother has a master's in education, whose father's, you know, the mayor and speaker of the assembly and went to great schools. My daughter, who's a freshman here at SC. So, you know, you learn it's not easy, but I've also learned this, and I believe this strongly. If you set high standards, these kids can learn. And I've learned that we make too many excuses about factors that, you know, make it more difficult, but not impossible for these kids to learn. So, you know, there was for a long time, if you watched it all, I was challenging this district on the percentage of kids who were dropping out. They denied that it was at 50%. Now there have been 5 studies that confirmed it's 50% and higher. I have Jordan High School, Roosevelt High School, you know, Santee High School. Jordan's in Watts, Santee's downtown, Roosevelt's on the east side. These were schools that were dropping out kids higher than 60%. When I was going to Roosevelt, it was 75. So, you know, we're focused. I've learned as well that if you have resources and flexibility and high standards, these kids, we can improve our schools. We're seeing that we could do it. But I've also said this. We're going to have to invest more in our schools. I mean, we have the ignominious distinction, everybody, of being 47th, 48th in per pupil spending. We're at the bottom of virtually every spending criteria when it comes to technology, libraries, counseling. You can't keep on cutting like this and wondering why. I mean, they're about to, maybe if we don't pass the governor's tax proposal, we're about to cut, well, tens of thousands of teachers statewide. I don't have the exact number, but almost 10,000 here. I mean, come on. With the largest class sizes in a school district that really needs more. Now, you know, it's a big challenge, but it's doable. It is doable. And that is got to be, I think, our mantra.
Can you talk a little bit about the upcoming mayoral election? Do you think strengths and weaknesses of
Oh. You know, look, it's too early. It's too early. You know, nobody's focused on it. I mean, you know, what happens, the way this works, people won't really start focusing on the mayoral race till after the presidential election. I mean, mostly people are focused on the Republican primary right now. Looks like Romney's getting out. I've always thought he was going to be the nominee. That'll sort itself out. That's where most of the light will be. And then from June through November, the light's going to be on President Obama and whoever the Republican nominee is. And then we'll focus on the mayor's race. There are three candidates that I know very well. Eric Garcetti, current city council member, former president of the council. Wendy Gruhl, the city controller. And Austin Butner, who was my chief deputy mayor for business and economic development. All very talented individuals, but it's way too early to call it. I mean, you know, when I ran in 2001, I was at 9% in the polls. Han was at 72. A year later, I beat him in the primary. I lost in the runoff. Back then, he was by far the front runner. And even in the second race that I won, he was the front runner because he was the incumbent. In this race, there's no incumbent, no front runner yet. Zev Yaroslavsky might get in. He would be a formidable candidate without question. If Mr. Caruso gets in, he's well-financed, and so it's going to be an interesting race. But it really won't play itself out till after November. And really, January, February, March, everybody will be glued. Well, wait. Probably the turnout will be about 30%, 30 to 32%. So I can't say everybody will be glued. And that's why we need an educated citizen. That's one of the reasons why we need an educated citizenry. I mean, come on, 32%. When I got elected, when I ran in, I think in 2001 it was a 36%, and in 2005 it was 31%. Turnout.
Yeah, you talk a lot about transportation and the job market. On that note, what can Los Angeles do to bring the first leg of the high-speed rail system that they're thinking about constructing to Los Angeles?
Well, the first leg won't be here. And let me tell you why. Because the amount of money that we had, it wouldn't have made sense coming here. You know, I'm a supporter of high-speed rail. And look, any of you been to Japan or China or France or Spain or any of these countries where they have you ever ridden? How many of you have ridden high-speed rail? Virtually, I tell people, I was on the Shinkansen. 2 billion people have ridden the Shinkansen over the last 50 years. The idea that we haven't built high-speed rail yet is ridiculous, and I think a barometer of just where we've come to in terms of making the investments in our infrastructure that are so important for our economy. So, I tell people, is it going to be expensive? Yes. It's going to be a lot more expensive 40 years from now when we finally build it. I mean, virtually every modern country in the world is building high-speed rail. Why do we need it? Because it's going to move people and goods. It'll be on goods, an alternative, primarily people, but an alternative to using aviation. It will be a tremendous boost to the California economy. The first leg, with the amount of money they have, needed to start in Fresno. It's why the mayors up and down the line kind of agreed to that. I think, obviously, we're 5 times the size of San Francisco, so it makes sense to start here in Southern California. And I'm not saying it because I'm mayor. It just does. We're the engine of the state. I remind my colleagues in the legislature from time to time. And believe me, I've got to remind it. And I'll be honest, one of the great things about having this SC Law School here and UCLA and Caltech, I mean, these are engines for economic development for Southern California and for our area. So, that's why it's not starting here. I'm hoping, The question is whether we do it at all. There's a lot of opposition because of cost. There's a lot of confusion. Hey, buddy. Hey, sir, how you doing? Are you going to school here now? I do. Oh, my God. Jesus. Used to work for me. Yeah, be late. Yeah, you know what I mean? Good to see you. And give me your names again, because it's always nice.
Sure, I'm Aaron.
Yeah, Aaron. A-A-R-O-N.
Yes.
Not E-R-I-N.
No. A-A-R-O-N. So I'm a first year, and I know a lot of my peers and I are looking into jobs for this summer, but more importantly, looking towards the future. And a lot of the job market for us is in downtown. And I actually just moved to Los Angeles at the beginning of this year.
From where?
From Miami.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I heard it's sunny and stuff, so I heard it's good.
And not humid.
No, not humid. It's been great. So
Miami is humid.
It is. So a lot of the jobs that we're looking at are downtown, and what I've realized and from people I've spoken to, that downtown is in its stage of almost a comeback, and it's being revitalized, and a lot more people are wanting to move there, especially the younger demographic, and especially with what AEG has done with LA Live and how that's being developed, and with the possibility of a football team. I want to know your opinion on where you see downtown going and how it's being developed further, so that, you know, if downtown becomes very relevant once again, then I know a lot of my classmates and I and people in our demographic will want to move there, and that could definitely spur some economic activity as well.
Well, you said it. You know, I mentioned I was shining shoes in the 1950s, 1958, 59, 60. That's the last time that there was a vibrancy to downtown. Through the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, and mid-90s, that was no longer true. And the same is true for Hollywood, by the way. Both areas are back. I mean, the average visitor who always wanted to come to Hollywood ended up staying, I think it was 23 minutes. Now they stayed overnight. The downtown is a place that is more and more becoming a great place for restaurants. More and more people are living in lofts, in condos and apartment buildings. It's only going to continue to grow. Bad economy, but I see next 10 years at least a 60% growth in the number of people who are living downtown. With the exposition line, when it's completed, to Santa Monica, as we connect the west side with the subway downtown, I think you're going to see a lot more people, and particularly young people, also people who are at the other end of the spectrum, people without, kids, disproportionately too. But downtown's future, and particularly, and obviously will be enhanced with the stadium there, is just unlimited. I left Roosevelt High School with the J.W. Marriott people who engage in service. They have 1,300 managers from around the world here, and they do service, so they were at Roosevelt High School. That convention center hotel has been a real big impetus for all of this, and they're building 2 more hotels. They're going to build a residential inn and a Courtyard Marriott right around there. So it's just growing and happening. And I would agree with you. It's going to be a place where this demographic particularly will spend a lot of time.
Mr. Goldberg?
How do you balance...
No, remember, he wants to hear your name.
Justin, how do you balance how do you balance being the mayor of one of the biggest cities in the country and the world, and then also being head of the U.S. Council of Mayors, and also being the head of the Democratic National Convention? How do you do all 3 roles at once?
No, I was joking. We were talking about working out, and look, you in these jobs, yeah, you have to multitask. I have great staff. I really do. I mean, I have SC, UCLA, Harvard, Stanford, Yale, Princeton. I have a lot of really top-notch people working for me, lawyers, just across the spectrum. And also, like this law school, very diverse, more than 50% women, come from every continent in the United States, in the world. I didn't just say that, but I caught myself. Different than some of these candidates who don't catch themselves. You got to multitask, and in the case of the presidency of the Conference of Mayors, it's not a job I spend full time on, of course. This is the full-time job. In the case of chairing the Democratic Party convention, it's a job I'm mostly going to do when I'm there, though there is some travel and some other ancillary duties before that. So it's basically a job of multitasking, but you need energy. And so I was talking to folks here. I'm not a big sleeper. I work out every single day, and I make time for that. I make time for the reading I need to do, and I make time for working out. So I have the energy to do it.
I'm Gus. So there are a lot of stereotypes about people from Los Angeles or the citizens of Los Angeles. I'm wondering what you think.
Where are you from?
We have worse stereotypes, trust me. Salt Lake City.
Salt Lake City. Great place. Mayor Becker. Yeah. Ralph Becker.
Pretty good guy, I'd say.
And he's a very good guy. Won with 73% of the vote.
Yeah.
He's a good guy.
I'm wondering what you think the unique characteristics or values of Angelenos are, and how you think that is going to affect the future of the city.
I like to say, LA doesn't care who your father was. In my case, they don't care that I didn't have one. And with Judge Walker's decision, they don't care if you have two of them. This is a town that says, just do it. I mean, we're 42% foreign-born, about 72%, 73% of the city is from Latin America, Asia, or Africa. We come from 140 countries. We speak 220 languages. This is this is a town that increasingly revels in its diversity. So I'd say that is a hallmark of this town. There was a lot ado about the fact when I got elected in 2005 that I was the first, and I didn't make a lot of ado about it, but others did. And I said to people, get excited, get over it. I'm the first, I'm not going to be the last. And I think what's unique about LA is that you're going to see many first. We have 37 nationalities that have their largest population here outside of their country of origin. So I'm not talking about the Brits and Canadians and Aussies who have their largest population here in the United States. I'm saying 37 nationalities that have their largest population outside of their country. So when the Korean president is here, he'll say hello to me and say, I'm the mayor of the 7th largest Korean city. When I'm with the Mexican president, he'll say I'm mayor of the 2nd largest Mexican city. When I'm with the president of Armenia, he'll say I'm the president of the 2nd or 3rd largest Armenian city. I mean, that's LA. This is Tehrangelas. So that means we have the largest Iranian population here. So I think that's a hallmark of this town. Look at you guys are 40%, color, 50% women, and this is one of the top law schools in the country. That's LA. I mean, it's SC, it's UCLA, but it's LA. And having said that, I'm not being Pollyannish. I'm not saying there's not conflict from time to time. I'm not saying there's not tension. I'm just saying this is a uniquely different town in that respect. You don't have to be here for I tell people, you could actually come here and be here a few years and run for mayor. I mean, you could. Whereas a lot of other cities, you'd have to be there, for a generation. It's a great place. I love it. There are other great assets, but that's the one I choose to focus on.
Hey, sir. Jared Ermis. Having worked for you in your press department for the better part of 2 years, I saw firsthand that one of the struggles of leading a city of this size, the accomplishments have to be as big as the city. And so some of your main accomplishments, the Clean Tech Corridor, 3010 Transportation Initiative, and 20% renewable by 2020, are all noteworthy, but the only problem is you're not going to be in office to see them finished. So I'm wondering, how do you balance this this long-term strategy, which I think is good, with this short-term press cycle where you want to see results immediately?
Well, the good news is that the 20% renewables by 2010, we actually hit. So, within, and many of the others, we'll hit a number. We're going to be the only city in the country next year to have 140,000 street lamps from incandescent lamps to LED, and I think it's the equivalent of taking out, well, it's actually the equivalent in terms of reducing our carbon footprint that our 20% renewables is. It's an amazing thing. In the end, you can't worry about the press cycle. I mean, first of all, with the 24/7, cable news and tweeting and everything else, if you worried about that, you would be, kind of schizophrenic in your approach to the world. You just got to keep on plugging away, keep on climbing up the mountain, and then let, the folks kind of evaluate what you've done when it's all said and done. I've kind of given up on, worrying about it, in real time, because over time, it kind of all comes out in the wash. So that's what I'd say on that. Good to see you. I'm sorry.
Hi, I'm Nicole. I have an LA question. I'm from the Washington, D.C. area, and you see big-time celebrities come to D.C. to fight for global issues all the time. But I was wondering what you're doing to capitalize on all of the star power we have here in LA to focus on and advocate for LA issues.
That's a great point. I'll tell you, sometimes it's a little difficult. They do focus a lot on, D.C., other continents, and, getting them focused inward is sometimes difficult. I mean, I have a lot of relationships, and I've certainly, engaged, whether it's Eva Longoria or Will.i.am or, a number of these folks, on issues. They do tend to focus, and they don't come to D.C. to be in the city. They come to D.C. to go to the Congress, and it's sometimes difficult to get them to look inward. And actually, I've done a number of speeches on that. I've said, we should all be committed to the poverty, to the loss after Katrina in New Orleans. But I've also said, if you're looking for poverty, come with me to Watts. Come with me downtown, just a few blocks from here. There's sometimes, this sense that poverty is in Africa and Latin America, and not enough of an understanding that we live in it here. I do, we've been blessed. We get a lot of good folks in the industry who get behind stuff. But from time to time, I do kind of lament that there's much more of a focus on other places around the world and not enough of a focus here.
We have time for one more quick question. Yeah.
My name is Alba Salehi, and I'm wondering, what is one one of your most proud achievements during your time as mayor, and then one thing on the other side that you wish you could have done differently?
Proudest achievements, I would say during my time as mayor is kids both graduated from high school, they went to college. That's a good thing. If you're a dad, we often say you're, in terms of gauging how well you're doing, you're only so good as the child that's struggling the most. So I've been lucky. All my kids are healthy and they're doing well. Achievement as mayor, again, unfinished, as Jared said, but I think what we're doing to put a light on our schools and the need to improve them, and what we've done, indefatigably to continue to raise the bar. And then safety. I mean, the city's safer than any time since the 1950s. Downtown, where I grew up, you mentioned downtown and what's happening there. Part of why it's enjoying this renaissance is it's safe. It's, but I'm kind of, and then what you said, the second one was, actually, you know what I've been saying? I think I would have spent more time traveling around the world. LA is barely starting to understand that it is a world-class, a global city, a world-class. It is a city-state. And our connection to China, Japan, Korea, India, Brazil, Mexico, Russia, Europe is our future. So I would have traveled more than I have. And if you read the paper, I get beat up for traveling to D.C. and Sacramento, which I tell people, I'm traveling to D.C. in the middle of the winter to see the cherry blossoms, I'm schlepping for money like you're supposed to, I'm going over here with my hat, can I have a quarter to expand our transportation system? But, I'd spend more time. When I went to China, that's how I brought Xi Jinping here. I met with Xi Jinping, who'll be the next president of China. I met with Wang Qishan, who will be second or third. He's going to be one of the top three people. I actually met with Bo Xilai, who was going to be part of the standing committee, but is now no longer there. But I say that to say, those relationships are important. We move 40% of their goods. I was here yesterday to say 95% of consumers live outside of the United States of America. We've got only 1% of our companies export, and 58% of them only export to one country. 8 out of 10 of the new markets are going to be outside of the world. We have got to connect to those economies. So I'd have spent more time traveling those countries, but when you do that, it's usually frowned upon as something that isn't a positive thing. But for LA, New York, Chicago, let me leave you with a statistic. The LA metropolitan area, we'd be the 17th largest economy in the world, the metropolitan area. If you took the three, New York, LA, Chicago, those three economies are the size of France. If you took the top 10 cities, our metropolitan economies, we'd be a $5 trillion economy. Connecting LA to Shanghai, Beijing, Chongqing, Tokyo, Singapore, Mumbai. This is our future. And, I really think it's an area that I am going to try to provide enough support for the next mayor to do that on a more regular basis. They have to. Whoever that person is, they've got to be. This is a job. You're a cheerleader. You're a statesperson, but you're also the face and the personal connection that a city has with another one. And it's, I think, an area that, I should have just done it.
With that, let me thank the mayor both for coming here today to share his thoughts with us, and especially for his service to our great city.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.